Hey guys, hope everything is well. Before we get started, I just want to send my well wishes to people in California that are dealing with these fires. I know it's taken people's homes and it's been devastating and could probably seem and probably in some ways might be unrecoverable. But guys, if you are in that area, I just wish your safety and your prosperity, and I'll be praying for you. And my thoughts are with you, and I hope that things can start to pick up around you, and I hope that your loved ones and you are safe, which is probably the most important thing. So if you're from that area, just sending my well wishes to you. But without further ado, let's talk about Creature Commandos, Episode 7, titled Very Funny Monster. Guys, I feel a lot of different ways about this episode and about this show as a whole. And I think the thing that we have to focus on and the thing that I'm having the most confliction with is Nina, the character of Nina. And for me, Nina deserved better. Nina Mazursky deserved better. To me, the word that popped in my mind when it came to her character was cruelty. And I wrote down not only the cruelty of her mother leaving her, which there's always situations we hear about. And I've worked with kids who've had extreme disabilities, extreme hardships in life. And it's always sad when sometimes a parent does leave. And those situations do happen where a parent goes, "This is too much for me. I want no part in this," and they leave their child. And the cruelty of losing a parent in that kind of way, not because they died, but because they chose to leave you. The cruelty of life, having to deal with this illness, having to deal with this affliction that she had, and then the only way to maybe even live or to live a better life is by becoming a mutated person. It's not fair, and there's so many kids, and this is like a real world thing. There's so many kids that deal with situations like this that go through an amount of pain that none of us could ever understand or even relate to. And it just shows you how precious life is and how cruel things can be sometimes. And she is no exception, and it just made me feel for her because you don't want to see kids suffer. That's something that this show I'll get to a little bit later, but seeing kids suffer is not something that I enjoy to watch. And so watching Nina suffer as a child, just it makes you feel a sense of weight that makes it feel really heavy when you're watching the show, and it makes you feel deeply for her. But I have a negative I want to get into, and it technically is a selfish negative of the show, but I have a negative of this show, and it's going to bother me for a while. The next thing is cruelty of the world. It just seems like every time she just tries to be peaceful, every time she tries to escape and live a better life, it just seems that the world doesn't want to allow her to have that. She probably should have always stayed with her father. If she would have stayed with her father, if she would have just been able to get out of the high school, ridiculousness that is high school, then things probably would have picked up for her. She should have been able to find a better life. She should have been an explorer seeking out in the ocean to find something new. Things should have been better for her. Yet, not only was high school and life cruel to her when she's living a normal life like a normal person, but life was cruel to her when she chose to go the other route, to live as a sea creature. And really, she was a slave. She didn't do anything illegal. She didn't do anything wrong. But because of her existence and the absence of a father who could vouch for her, she was put in prison to serve a term in prison, to be held by the government. It's just cruel. It sucks. And the fact that it ends with a cruelty of circumstance. And the specific note I wrote was a circumstance to defy the narrative we would expect. And this is where my negative comes in, because it's a personal negative, it's a me negative, it's not a storytelling negative. James Gunn knew that story-wise, narrative-wise, there's certain things called like narrative truths, where if you watch a story, you go, okay, I know where they're going to go with this, because narratively, this is what makes the most sense. This is what's going to make an audience feel better at the end of the story. And that is Nina Mazursky living. All the other characters could have died, and I would have been okay. I didn't want to see Nina die. That's the one character I didn't want to see die. That's the one character I didn't want to see anything bad happen to. Yet she dies. And in a cruel way. And it sucks, because everything in this character's life was cruelty. That's all she's been able to experience. The only love she's ever had was from her father. Everything else was cruel. Everything else was cruel. Besides maybe the small relationship she was starting to have with the bride. But even that, with the bride's side of it, maybe in some ways, the bride gave her a little bit of peace, calling her a monster at the end of the show. But, man, I'm so selfishly, because I get story-wise why he did what he did, because no one's expecting Nina to die, and no one probably wants Nina to die. That's the one character that you don't want to die. And so James Gunn goes, okay, I got to take this from you to make you feel things. And guess what? I feel things, but I'm not happy. And one of the reasons I'm not happy is I feel like it was wasted potential. It feels wasted. That character could have gone on to do different things. I wanted to see that character have a happier life. I think that character could eventually have went to something like Atlantis. We could have seen her be a character in an Aquaman movie or an Aquaman type show. She deserved that. And the fact that she didn't get that, I am personally aggrieved. I am pissed. Because I just think that she deserved that, and I really hate that she wasn't able to have it. Which gets into the next part. The cruelty started to be too much. And I'll tie back into the Nina's ending in a second, but I think with this show, yes, it had to clarify, it had to make a point that these characters are technically monsters, and they do ruthless things, and they'll kill people, and they'll murder people in ruthless ways. They are not your Superman. They are not your Batman. They are going to murder people in cold blood. And that was starting to become too much. It really was. It's like, because in my brain, I'm wanting these characters to be heroic even though I know they're not supposed to be. And I'm supposed to root for them, but at the same time, I don't want to root for them. The scenes where Dr. Phosphorus is like, he could have easily just knocked the dude out. He could have easily just fought the guy and knocked him out and would have had no issue. But instead of just knocking the dude out, he just puts his hand through the dude's chin and just destroys it. That stuff, and like I said, I don't like seeing cruel things happen to kids. It's hard on me. I don't like watching it. Me and my wife, we just read Something is Killing the Children, the first volume of it. Really good, really enjoyed it. But man, that book has some parts where it's showing cruelty towards children, and it's hard. It's rough to read, and watching it is just an extra level. I don't know. That's my weakness. That's my weak side. I don't like seeing bad things happen to kids. And so I'm not gonna lie, I think 7 episodes is enough, because I think after a certain amount, if I kept on going along with these characters, it would start to feel too much. And I think giving me 7 episodes, maybe you could work with 8, but 7 episodes, and then letting me dip out for a while, I think by the time season 2 comes, I'm going to be excited and ready to watch it. But, man, I couldn't handle any more shish kebabs. I think I was crueltied out. Which gets it back into the princess and Nina. When Nina has to go and kill the princess, you kind of knew that maybe she didn't have much of a chance. Because not only is it that Nina is actually a good person who doesn't want to harm people, it's actually because also the princess is a very dangerous individual who, in that moment where she is taking the knife from Nina and just stabbing her ruthlessly, you could tell that there was nothing in her eyes. That she is someone who is a dangerous individual. She is not this innocent princess that she's made herself out to be. Which gets into, what this story kind of felt like to make it work. Because we were all kind of wondering, who the real villain is. And it was the princess all along. And to be honest, for the show to work, that was probably the only true answer that we could really have. Because Cersei, bringing it back that Cersei was trying to trick everybody, that would feel kind of like a waste. And I don't think there was enough time to fully satisfy that. Also, I didn't want to see Cersei die in this show. I think you could use Cersei in the future, and I think killing off Cersei would have been a waste. The other side of that is Gorilla Grodd. I feel like James Gunn put Gorilla Grodd in there as kind of like distract us, and maybe eventually she would have took Gorilla Grodd under her ranks, and he would have been a soldier for her. But you kind of wonder, like, okay, is Gorilla Grodd going to be a villain in this show? And he only was in that little quick, vision. He wasn't a part of the show. And so to make him the main villain wouldn't have worked either. And so I'm glad they went the direction they did, I guess. It makes sense story-wise, but narratively, you could tell that all the beats in this kind of felt like a movie. It definitely felt like when James Gunn originally wrote this script, he probably wrote it thinking if he could make a sequel to Suicide Squad, this was going to be his sequel. Because he set up the events of Peacemaker, and then he was going to probably have this happen instead of Suicide Squad. But then when Suicide Squad, and you probably have to make these things just as a backup, just in case, no matter what happens. And then whenever he got approved to be over at DC Studios, he looks at everything and goes, you know what? I think we can make this into a movie, or we can make this into a show, and it'll make a lot more sense, and it'll flow better, and that's what they decided to do. But watching the show, it definitely, all the beats inside the show, definitely makes it feel like a movie. And I think if you put all of the episodes together, it probably would have the runtime of a theatrical released movie. So, maybe a little longer than a normal movie, but, I bet you he added things once he goes, okay, this is going to be a show. It's just, you could just tell. You could just tell that's what it felt like. It felt like originally the show was supposed to be a movie. But the fact that it was her, it's like, okay, that makes sense, and narratively, it's like her ending. I was happy she died because she killed Nina, It's like, yeah, the chick deserved it. And the fact of who is really the monster, Like, yeah, we're following all these creature commandos. We're following all these creatures, these monsters. But the reality is, who is really the monster? And this beautiful princess might be the biggest monster of them all. And I kind of like the idea that they kind of played with that. Eric Frankenstein, though, you could tell that his role definitely, and this is one of the reasons it felt like a movie to me, because his character development definitely felt like what you would see in a movie, and it definitely doesn't feel like his character development is finished, and it kind of the scene where he finally pops up, it's just kind of like, okay. The way it ended, it was just like, all right. It didn't feel satisfying. I didn't feel satisfied by that, and so I'm glad that clearly he's alive and that he'll probably pop up in the next, how many seasons they do this show, because I feel like the character needs a little bit more character development, because I wasn't, if there wasn't a season 2 of this show, I wouldn't have been satisfied with what happened to his character. That's just the way I kind of look at it. I think this also brings up the whole Batman in the room. I think this definitely clarifies how old our Batman is, how long Batman's been, patrolling the streets of Gotham, fighting crime. And I'm hoping this shuts up the whole narrative about possibly Robert Pattinson being the Batman of the DCU. I'll say this. I don't know what's going to happen. I've made arguments against having him here. I have done a couple different videos supporting the idea that we're going to have 2 different Batman, that will have 2 different universes, and why I think that could still work. If they choose to go that route with Robert Pattinson, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to personally be disappointed, because I'm ready to see a Nightwing. I'm ready to see a Red Hood. I'm ready to see a Damian Wayne Robin. And with Robert Pattinson, we're not going to have that, and I just don't think it really makes sense. Personally, I don't think it makes sense that Batman, especially when metahumans are supposed to be existing, especially when you have someone like Nina Mazurski, who was living a life around other people, and people would make fun of her and be cruel to her, but she was living life around other human beings, going to school. It just doesn't, that world and the Robert Pattinson world just doesn't make sense to me. And so personally, I am on the bandwagon of, I hope those 2 universes stay separate. I don't want those things to coexist. And that's just kind of me, and I hope that that's true. And otherwise, I'll be a little disappointed. A little. I'll be okay. I'll be fine. But it's just because I would also love to see a Dick Grayson Robin. And I think that's what the change will happen. We'll get a Dick Grayson Robin, and we won't have Damian Wayne and all that stuff. But I don't know. I hope that's not the route they go. And in all, as the show is about to end, they tease some new characters. And characters that we've seen before. But we got King Shark possibly coming into the next season. We have G.I. Robot, who has been revived, and he's bigger and better than ever. That was happy. That was the one thing that made me happy, seeing G.I. Robot at the end. Because if we're going to lose Nina, then at least we have G.I. Robot. You have Callus, the mummy, and then you have Nosferatu, the female, mutated vampire. I think she's from an animal city, right? Something like that. And so, anyway, the characters are cool. We'll see what they do next season with these characters. When does that next season come out? I'm not sure. Is James Gunn going to write it? I'm also not sure. Maybe James Gunn will co-write it with the guy that directed this show. He was the old director or the old showrunner of Harley Quinn. And maybe, James Gunn trusts him enough to go ahead and give him the reins and let him tell a story and let him do what he's going to do. But we'll have to see. I think these characters can work. They're original members of Creature Commandos. I would like a Wolfman kind of character. It seems like they've kind of given up the Wolfman character for Weasel. But I would still like a Wolfman character in the Creature Commandos. And so I hope that they maybe will add some new characters that we're not expecting for a season 2. But I guess we'll have to see. So far, guys, what do you think of this show? What do you think of the very start of the DC universe? Clearly, Superman's the start. We all kind of understand that. But what do you think of this as a whole? Do we feel like James Gunn? Are we in good hands with the DC universe? I kind of feel like we are. But let me know what you think down below. rest in peace, Nina Mazursky. Justice for Nina Mazursky. I want to see that she's actually alive and not dead. Anyway, maybe in my own dreams, maybe Nina, has a healing factor that no one knew about, and Nina was able to heal herself, and she was able to escape, and she went into the ocean, and she found Atlantis, and she's just chilling in Atlantis, drinking, Atlantis liquor drinks, and just enjoying life. That's my alternate ending that I'll just keep in my heart to feel okay with how this show ended. But anyway, guys, let me know your thoughts down below, and let me know what you think, guys. Whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, I hope you're having a good one. Peace.